All right, welcome back to Energy Explained, the family YouTube and podcast on all things energy. I am joined by my father, Vikram Rao, who is a authority, or in my mind, on all things energy. He comes to us via the Stanford Engineering Department in the 1970s and retired as the Chief Technology Officer of Halliburton, and now advises energy companies in the decarbonization and green energy space. He's joining us here from outside of Durham, North Carolina, and I'm out here in Amsterdam. How are you doing today, Dad?
Doing well. We're finally getting fall weather here. Thank you, God and goodness.
I know, same with us. I love fall. And the Astros are about to, head to the World Series, so it's good, some good fall times ahead for us. Hopefully that ages well. Well, today we're going to talk about a pretty serious topic, and it's all about the politics of energy independence or energy interdependence. And so, first let's lead into that. People might have heard the term energy independence, but be less familiar with the term energy or strategic energy interdependence. And how would you sort of draw, a contrast in those two concepts and really emphasize that strategic energy interdependence concept?
Yeah, I think energy independence is a misnomer. It should not really be used because each country, in the globalization of trade, the thought that you should be independent in energy uh, is costly, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Okay, and so interdependence is a good thing, but I think your point about strategic, yes. Well, the interdependence has to be with reliable partners. Okay, uh, so yeah, I think we do need energy interdependence. It's already happening episodically in some parts of the world. It needs to be more formalized.
Now let's talk. You know, so strategic energy interdependence would be forming a coalition of trusted partners by which you build both your energy security, that is, your people can turn their lights on, get heat when they need it, your factories can run to produce bedrock of your economy, as well as make joint decarbonization goals, right? So it will be both. Now, let's imagine we have these blocks set up. We're not here to talk about politics, but you can see, for example, a block emerging in Western Europe. You can see the NAFTA block in North America, and so forth. Now, what I want to discuss with you is that each block has different challenges to create both strategic interdependence, so that outside of that block, they're less reliant on the rest, and decarbonize at the same time. Maybe we'll start walk down the path with Europe because the conflict in Ukraine, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, has sort of really brought this to the forefront that there was not strategic interdependence and there was a lot of dependence on a nation state that is not proven to be one that you can depend on, either from a ethical or humanistic point of view or a strategic point of view because they're cutting off the supplies. Now, let's talk Europe. How do you see the situation playing out for Europe right now? For those, just an update is Europe has set a 15% natural gas reduction targets for the winter. Schools will be colder, malls will be colder. We'll use less natural gas to keep the everyday life going. Obviously, it seemed to be a temporary sort of stopgap with the reserves filled up. How does this play out the next few years, and how can we decarbonize and create that interdependence in Europe?
Yeah. So first, go back to what the deal with Russia. Nobody could have predicted the Ukraine war. Okay, would have been unthinkable at any time, kind of unthinkable now, but it's happening.
Yeah.
Okay, but what they could have predicted is Russia using energy as a weapon of political will.
Mm-hmm.
That happened in 2009 when they cut off gas for 10 days to southern Germany through the Ukraine. Uh, and and it was done as a slap on the hand. It was done deliberately, and so because it was done, and gas has been used as a weapon of political will, nobody should be surprised
Mm-hmm.
that it is being done now.
Mm-hmm.
So there are three factors right now in what's happening in Europe. One is gas as political will. Excuses being made for maintenance. It's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second is the Ukraine war, which should not have happened, but let's park that one as an aberration. And the third is climate change, which has driven natural gas prices up even before the war.
Right.
Okay, you might
We
remember
talked about it.
that. Yeah, exactly. We talked about it, and that has happened largely due to droughts in places with hydroelectricity
Yeah.
in China and other places. and therefore hydro dropped. So they needed LNG. So did Europe, and on it went. Okay. In fact, Portugal has been set back quite a bit in with droughts with hydroelectricity. So nobody should have been surprised
And decommissioning
that.
coal, right? I mean, Germany has decommissioned a lot of coal power plants, and natural gas was the Russian natural gas was essentially the substitute, right? So Germany, a lot of places decommissioning coal, good thing, but natural gas was seen as a cheap and viable alternative, right?
Right, right. So that was, that was not a good bet as it turned out. So what it boils down to is that energy deals, interdependency, should be done with trusted partners, not just with a partner of convenience. So Europe right now is an interesting gimmish, if you will. Okay, you got lots of wind in Portugal and Denmark, uh, lots of natural gas in the Netherlands, lots of nuclear power in France.
Lots of
Okay,
wind in Germany.
a lot of winds in Germany. So, so what you have is exactly what you said. Each sector is good at something.
Yeah.
Okay, for whatever reason, either for policy reasons or for nature reasons, and so therefore, it's it makes sense that when the sectors combine in some way, then it's for the greater good. Yeah.
So let's follow that thread. So France has the highest human capital in nuclear power and the ability to dispose of nuclear, the byproducts of nuclear power, the nuclear waste. They were a net power exporter up until a few years ago when they started decommissioning certain nuclear generators for planned maintenance, and now they're not. But let's say they can get back up to speed. And then I'm going to guess you're going to say, because you're a big believer in it, invest in small modular nuclear reactors using that same human capital and that ability to dispose of waste. So in this model, I already can guess it, France starts generating a lot more nuclear power. But that's not going to really solve it the next 2 years, right? Like that's not a right exactly now solution. But nuclear will be part of the backstop, if you will, as we build up more wind and solar everywhere. But where's the other backstop come from in Europe? Because there's not enough gas in Norway and the Netherlands and so forth to replace all of the Russian natural gas. And I don't think we want to start building a bunch of receiving terminals in Northern Europe that are going to be used for like 4 years until these French nuclear reactors spin up. So like, what's the right allocation of the short run versus the medium and long run in this situation that Europe finds itself?
Yeah. So I'll answer the last part first and then go back to France. Okay. The last part, the answer is that we need floating LNG for the short term. Okay. Floating LNG is where, so LNG, to remind listeners, is liquefied natural gas. It is where natural gas is liquefied at minus 161 centigrade into a liquid and then transported across oceans. Okay. Then you have to regenerate. It's called regassing. You have to regenerate the gas. And that is typically done on a terminal on land. One of the newer developments has been something called floating regas, where a vessel is used to do the regas. The advantage of that is threefold. One is it is net cheaper. Third is it's quicker, and the fourth is that it's movable. Okay. See, right now for Europe to invest in a lot of shore terminals is probably not the greatest idea. Maybe some, but not a lot. It's not the greatest idea, because then what happens when decarbonization kicks in?
Yeah.
This capital will go unutilized. So I think the perfect nothing is perfect. A good solution is floating regas terminals, because when you're done with them, they'll go to some other part of the world.
Now,
So that's that part.
do
Yeah.
you see those in Northern Europe where the gas is coming from North America, or Southern Europe where the gas is coming from Northern Africa and Turkey?
Well, more Northern Europe, because Southern Europe and Northern Europe gas pipelines are in short supply.
Okay.
In fact, there are hardly any from Portugal, which is too bad, because Portugal and Spain have actually unused capacity on existing regas terminals, as we discussed in a previous call.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Which were built with the whole Libya to Southern Europe idea back in the day.
Right, and it is believed that the French did not allow the natural gas pipeline to go through. So again, it's believed. I'm just going to quote an article that said that. Whether it's true or not, I'm not certain. But these are all the things that have to be. These blocks are removed. Europe has to act as a block. It has done so as EU, it has done so for free trade between each other. They should do so for energy. And parochial interests should be taken care of in some way. I can't say you can park them, okay?
Yeah.
But should be taken care of in some way.
So Europe needs to accelerate energy treaties or energy agreements in the bloc that allow France to overbuild nuclear capacity to their needs and be a big net exporter of baseload capacity, and be in this some compensation model, get in return peak load capacity in some way, either wind from Southern Europe or natural gas from Northern Europe in some way. Similarly, the Northern European countries that need to be on the water, essentially receiving this liquefied natural gas, need to be in some way, be compensated and so forth. So we need to build like a joint economic approach here, and it's going to involve liquefied natural gas in the short run. It's going to involve more nuclear in the short run. Now, is there anything else for this load following capacity that it would involve in the next 5 years, or we'd say this is what we, in this treaty, in this arrangement, we need to start investing in X as well?
Yeah, I think the other thing is geothermal energy, a new type of geothermal. It's called advanced geothermal systems. And I know, and it's possible anywhere in the world. So it's certainly possible in Europe as well. So it would be a part of the mix. To me, clean energy is just a big basket, and you pick that basket to have various components. For Europe today, for filling the gaps of solar and wind. So solar and wind pretty much have low capacity factors, which is utilization of capital. And so no more than about 30%. So the more solar and wind you do, the more you need to fill that gap. And right now it's done with natural gas, which is not going to be a good idea. It can be done with nuclear, with small modular reactors, as you pointed out. Now, I see France taking a huge central role, okay? First, from producing as much as they can on the existing ones. Say, take, for example, Diablo Canyon in California, okay? It was supposed to be decommissioned in a couple of years, in 2025, okay? They made a decision to extend that for several years. I'm not certain how many, okay? Because it comprised 9% of the energy in California and 16% of the renewable energy, or clean energy anyway. Nuclear is not exactly renewable. And that's a good idea, okay? And not forever, but it's a good idea as a bridge, and that's what France should do. There may have been some plans that they thought, we'll probably decommission these guys, okay? Well, no, for the interest of the whole, keep them alive with your technology and with your expertise for a bit longer. And in the meantime, the ones you do have to retire, make them small modular reactors. And more importantly, encourage SMRs, that's what they're called, everywhere else in Europe, and provide them the expertise. See, here's the thing. The one thing SMRs have a negative against them, if you will, is what all nuclear does, which is, what do you do with the spent nuclear fuel? Well, that problem is solved by France, okay? So solve it for all of Europe.
So, and then in this model, other European nations are funding this capital investment in French nuclear power, because they're fundamentally, anything in France invests in, if they're in a treaty with them, that just like, France may not be a good example, but Germany is not making fighter jets. They're buying them from the United States. Most NATO countries do not make the weaponry they use. They buy it from the United States. And they pay them top dollar for that. So of course everybody wins. And so that's how these defense treaties work, is that, you get your arms manufacturing deals, and we're used to that. But for energy, we sort of have this idea that somehow we need to take care of it ourselves. And you're saying that's just an idea that's not going to work anymore, and it's not going to help decarbonize. So Europe, I'm hearing a story of nuclear is going to play a bigger role than it might do elsewhere. France is a huge strategic asset in this, but there needs to be investment. Liquefied natural gas is going to play a role, but the idea is to not make too long-running capital investments, because those investments will get stranded, especially if they use land in receiving terminal areas that's otherwise valuable. And then new load-following technologies like geothermal are going to play a role. Now let's talk about Americas. Mexico, United States, and Canada are part of the North American Free Trade Agreement. So they're natural trading partners with each other. Each one of them is one of the top 3 trading partners with the other. What would a strategic interdependence treaty look like in North America? how does it differ from Europe, and how is it maybe simpler in a way?
Yeah, so there it's a very simple one. In oil and gas, they already essentially have it, which is that it turns out that United States oil refineries are more profitable if they use heavy oil, partly because heavy oil is discounted heavily. Okay, and heavy oil comes from Canada and Mexico. Okay, so what you have is, and yet Mexico doesn't have enough natural gas. So natural gas goes from South Texas to Mexico. Natural gas comes from Canada to the U.S. to some degree, and the heavy oil comes. And when you put them all together, North America is on its way, and I predicted this in 2012. It's on its way by 2025, the latest, on energy independence of the North America as a whole,
Yeah.
not each country.
Yeah.
So this is the way North America go. Similarly, South Asia should do the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I think you made a very interesting. You coined a phrase which I like. Okay, which is energy treaties. Okay, right now, take EU. EU has got a defense treaty. It's got an economic treaty, if you will.
Yeah.
It needs an energy treaty.
Yeah. Yeah. Same in North America, right? There's economic treaties.
Same in North,
Uh,
same in North America.
there is certainly a history of treaties between the countries from a conflict perspective, but there's not an explicit. There's maybe a feeling that that wouldn't be wise, but those are trusted partners, and as you said, and in that world, North America then becomes a net oil exporter, which de-risks Europe from other entities in the Middle East in terms of importing oil and so forth, right? Because in that model. There's just more profitable oil production, refining, and so forth, right? Is that so? You see North America getting that as a block independent, and then becoming a net energy exporter. Otherwise,
See, the other thing is in solar and wind right now are the cheapest, the cheapest way to produce electricity
yes,
there is.
yeah.
Okay. But I want to point out the 60% of components for solar panels comes from China.
Yeah,
60%
yeah,
of the world's solar panel component comes from China. If China chose to play the Russian game of using that as political will,
yeah,
I don't know what would do to solar prices as it was done to natural gas prices. So, and I'm not talking about wars, okay?
yeah,
Just political will,
yeah,
okay? Uh, so it just goes back to interdependence should be with trusted partners.
yeah. Now it's a great point. I mean, right now we focus a lot on solar, and there's I mean, the Inflation Reduction Act, which was the change of name of the policy to encourage a lot of green energy investment in the United States, has in their considerations to make batteries in the United States for car electric vehicle credits. And it tries to do more to fund the domestic solar industry in ways, but there's a fundamental supply chain issue right now. Are you suggesting that in part of these energy treaties, there's proactive development of the weaknesses and saying, well, right now we're 10 years exposed on solar, so let's get out ahead of that, because while China hasn't used energy as a political will in the past, that it's not, like you said, it's not outside the realm of possibility by any means that this would be used. And so you're saying in these blocks, write these treaties, they're not just what we do today, but what capabilities we develop to create that strategic block-based independence. Is that what you're?
Yeah, it's happening.
Yeah.
In India is making solar panels. The U.S. is making solar panels. The U.S. is setting up lithium supply, domestic supply. Uh, yeah, it's happening. People are not. I haven't seen it openly written anywhere that China might use as political will.
Yeah.
But and so I don't know if that notion has cachet, but it doesn't matter. The point is nobody thought it would happen in Russia
Right.
either.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, people are doing it, but they should do it on a more strategic basis. It being interdependency only with trusted partners,
That's right. No.
not just do it yourself. Okay. Yeah.
Right. Right. And then you see, of course, then there's this block-based independence. It's still world trade. I mean, Europe will still be dependent on American solar panels or someplace, but you have multiple options. You de-risk yourself in this way. It's not quite arms dealing where you just literally buy from the United States, because it's a little more complex than that in terms of supply chain, and quite frankly, the production levels and the pricing implications are too important, right? We just need to have so much of this stuff we can't rely on one single provider, but we have to build that in there in terms of these block level sort of treaties of, but your contiguous neighbors are your natural partners because of so much stuff moves over pipelines, so much stuff moves over distances being a cost, and so that's where you start. Now we've talked about in South America. I'm assuming looks a lot like the situation in North America in terms of, I know the political situation is differently, but in terms of the resources situation, it probably mirrors the North American situation.
Yeah, so South America is more like North America. I have not studied it, but if you look at all the component countries of South America, they have it all. Yes, particularly when you include minerals such as iron ore and so forth, which Brazil has a lot of. Yes, see, because strategic commodities are not just energy. Okay,
Yeah.
it's some of these other things too, including steel. So yeah, I think the main thread of all of this is that we need energy treaties, and yeah.
Yeah, and what I like about this, so people have asked me, about if we're going to do a podcast on it, is it possible the conflict in Ukraine, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, will accelerate the transition to green energy decarbonization? And the answer here, it in the long run feels like maybe yes. Why do I say this? Because if you focus on strategic energy independence, block level independence, you're talking about making strategic investments. Now, you're not talking about going to the gas store at the lowest prices anymore. You're talking about making strategic investments. Now, most places can invest in renewables because renewables are less dependent on what's under you and more dependent on the technology, right? So if we start making energy investments if we start thinking of national security investments directed at energy, that's more investment capital in the energy business. That leads to more renewables and more green energy, such as nuclear, because it's no longer saying it's just the lowest cost wins, because the lowest cost would be just to buy short run from, let's be honest, Middle Eastern countries and Russia and so forth that are not provably reliable trading partners, let alone the issues that it creates politically, which is a nightmare in terms of geopolitically. So that is what makes me quite optimistic, but you need this machinery. You have to focus on the block level. You can't do it focused too narrowly, otherwise you might make the wrong investments. Does that resonate? Is it something that it could be? We look back, just like we looked at, various conflicts historically of change points. While the conflict wasn't a good thing, it led to a flashpoint of change that ended up leading to progress. Not saying the conflict was good, but it did shift the nature of things. Could you see that happening here?
Yeah, I think so. It's basically lemonade from lemons. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I think the Russian Russian war, but also the Russian use of energy as a weapon of political will, has told us that we need to have strategic interdependencies.
Yeah.
We need to have energy treaties, as you call them.
Yeah.
And we probably would not have come to that conclusion before all this happened. Okay?
No, I mean, in the 70s, there was, the gas embargo, oil embargoes and so forth, and fuel efficiency, fleet efficiency doubled in 7 years or so, right? But the technological response, North America couldn't produce enough oil back then. So the technological response was to improve efficiency. But here, the technological response can be to change the generation mix, the fuel mix, right? And so I think it could be, if you go look at it, if you're out there, check out the average fleet efficiency from 1970 and 1985. It's like different. I mean, you were alive, obviously. It's like a different planet in terms of fuel efficiency in North America, at least. And something like that could happen here. It directed the investment differently. So I don't know. I'm sanguine, but we shall see. Anything we missed? Any parting words on this topic?
No, I don't think so. I think the only parting, if anything, is the realization that we need energy treaties between trusted partners, and we probably might not have come to that were it not for this conflict.
It's easy to, even though like you said, it was done. It had been used in this way, but now it's undeniable. And you couldn't say it's not a risk, right? You have to confront that it is not just a risk, but a reality. Well, thank you for your time today. Lovely discussion and fantastic seeing you. Remind our listeners, if you're listening on YouTube, that The comment section on YouTube is where we have the discussion about Energy Explained. If you're listening on a podcast, you can head over to YouTube, have a comment, and so forth. If you're listening on a podcast, of course, hit like, subscribe, all of those normal things, and we'll get back into them Energy Explained. Thanks to you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.